Welcome back to the dojo, samurais. Today we will be looking at Flexdashboard. If you remember on lesson 12, we covered how to create amazing reports using R Markdown. So Flexdashboard is going to be a little bit of an extension of that, and it'll allow us to create some amazing dashboards with very little knowledge. I consider this to be usually the step before you start developing through Shiny. Start developing Shiny applications. So it's a good foundational step. I believe that expands a little bit on what you know from R Markdown to some extent. Now I have here opened the previous report that we did. Right, I'm not gonna be using it. I just wanted to have R open already. So what we're gonna do first is make sure that we have installed the package that we will use. In this case, it's called Flexdashboard. So if you don't have it installed, make sure that you type here Flexdashboard and then click Install Dependencies, Install. Okay, I'm not gonna do it because I already have it installed. So I'm gonna click Cancel here. In your case, please remember to press Install. Okay. Now, once we have that, I'm gonna be closing. Well, I'm gonna keep this one open because we're gonna be reusing some of the code that we have here to make it much simpler. But what I'm gonna do is I will go here, and actually you see that I have here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I deleted it. I usually prepare these classes, right? So I shouldn't have it there. The file that we're gonna be building together. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to here, create new, and we're gonna select our markdown. But instead of choosing here like this, we're gonna choose from template, and then we should have something called Flexdashboard. We're gonna be using the first one, Flexdashboard. Okay, then we're gonna press OK, and now we have a Flexdashboard document. I'm going to add some few additional things to the header, and that will be, well, first of course, let's not call it untitled. Let's call it my first dashboard. First, by the way, this class might take close to an hour, maybe a little bit more. I'll try to make it as quick as possible, but just be prepared for that in case you're watching live, or make sure that have enough time to go through the whole content at once, or you can always just come back at a later point if you're watching this on a replay. Okay, so this will keep like this. We're gonna change our orientation from columns to rows, right? That's how we're gonna be organizing our content. So we're going to be changing it to rows. We'll be changing later other parts of the code. Then vertical layout, we'll have it as fill. And we're gonna be adding something else here called runtime shiny. So this will make it so that we have a basically shiny functionality that we'll be adding to this to make the dashboard a little bit more dynamic and interesting by introducing our first concepts of reactivity. Okay. So as you can see, very similar to how you had in our markdown, you have our chunks, right? And you can of course select options here. We're not gonna be playing with the options this time like we did back in our R markdown tutorial. We're just gonna be keeping this the same as it is. Now here in the first chunk, I want to load all my libraries. So I already have Flexdashboard here. Next, we're going to be loading DT, which we used last time to create a nice table. then of course tidyverse for our data wrangling, and then we'll add another library called Plotly, which I am introducing in this lesson to create some graphs that are pretty cool. Pretty cool, but you'll see the difference once we get there. Okay, so we will be doing that. Then we will be using our favorite data frame, empty cars. I call it empty cars df from empty cars dataset. And actually, first let me load all the libraries. Okay, you will see a bunch of stuff happening. That's fine. And then empty cars. Oh, by the way, I forgot to make this big. It happens all the time, huh? I never I never learn. Okay, hopefully now it's much bigger. Right, so let's go back again. We'll be adding here runtime shiny, and then we'll be adding all these libraries that we'll be using. Then we'll be transforming empty cars. We'll do like we did last time, row names to column, and our variable will be called car. And then we'll do another pipe, and we'll do a mutate, and we'll be changing cylinder like last time to as.factor cylinder. Okay, now we execute this, and we have here nicely our information. Okay, so that concludes our setup. So let me save this, by the way. Let's call it let's call it my first dashboard. Okay, my first dashboard. Great, it's there. Next, what we will be doing is we're going to be changing a little bit of our, and actually if we run this, you see that now we have something called run document because we chose runtime shiny. I think if I remove this and I save it, it goes back to knit. But since I have runtime shiny in there, it says run document. And here, if I press run document, we should be seeing a very simple layout here. We will be modifying this layout to something else, right? I'm going to be teaching you how to do certain other things with it. So let's close this, okay? Let's close this. So I said that we're going to be working by rows. And I think, where can you get ideas of different layouts that you can do? Well, I had it ready for you. And you can go to Flexdashboard, right, to these articles, just by typing Flexdashboard layouts. And then you'll end up here. And these are all the different things that you can do with Flex dashboards. Of course, this is not an extensive list of all the different configurations that you can have, but it gives you a pretty nice idea of all the different things that you can do. We will be using something that is called, we're going to be doing a multiple page Flex dashboard, and then we will be doing an input sidebar that is global. Okay, so important to take into consideration here is that sometimes you have a single, well, a hyphen, and sometimes you have an equal sign. So it's important to make that distinction when working with multiple pages or a global sidebar. Right? If you just put a sidebar with just like this, you'll probably have some issues in the layout. We'll see if we can recreate those issues later. Okay. So first thing we're gonna do is we'll be changing this to, let's remove this because we want to have here a sidebar. So we will be choosing dot sidebar, and if you remember, that comes basically from over down here, right? But we won't be using this particular one. We'll be using this one. So we can can also copy it from here, by the way, but I will not copy it. I will just type it myself. Sidebar. So actually, let's call it uh, inputs, because that will be the name of this. And here, we're not going to change this yet to the equal sign. We'll see how it goes. But I want this to have also multiple pages. So what I will do next is, now that I have my input sidebar, I want to have let's say a main graph. So I will delete this. Actually, let's maintain that code of chunking here, because we will be working with that. Great. Next, we will go here into another page. Let's call it main graph. And then it's data orientation equal rows, and we'll be changing this to lots of equal signs here. Okay, now that we have that done, we will be doing next a row. So let's type row, and then we will be copying this, because that's how you work with rows in Flexdashboard. We have to specify it. Now that we have a row, we can have, let's call it just chart. Let's call it chart, and it's going to be some chart. We're going to be introducing that code later on. And then after that, we'll have another page, let's say. So let's copy this. Let's paste this over here. Let's call it table and chart. This is gonna be our other page. Chart, the orientation equal rows also. And then let's copy let's copy this again, the row. Let's copy the row, but we will be having something different. So we will be using let's see if we can find it here, a tab set, a tab here. We'll be using this. So I want this area to be like this, so we're gonna be copying. Let's copy this from here. Okay, tab set fade, and then let's call this one of them, let's call it table, and then we'll call another one, and let's quickly copy this, by the way. We will be calling this other one chart. Okay, that's it. Now I think on purpose I left the inputs like this with the hyphen, just to see what the layout would look like, what happens to it. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, you see, this shouldn't be looking like this. This is obviously not right. And the error is quite simple. We basically forgot to change this hyphens into the equal sign, because we want that sidebar to be global. So if you ever make that mistake, it's very simple to fix. Just change it to equals, run the document again, and there we go, beautiful. Right, so now we have here our skeleton for our application. By the way, this is something that you can host in a server as an application, and you can do some very amazing things with just some very basic knowledge of Flexdashboard and some reactivity concepts. So now we have this, we have our skeleton. Now what we will be doing next is we will be adding some charts and inputs, etc. to here. So first let's add a chart. Okay, Let's add a chart. So we already have a chart from our last time. We have it here. Actually, let me see. HP, let's see. Yeah, okay. Let's copy this. We'll be modifying this a little bit. We'll change a little bit the contents of this. So we have ggplot, and of course our data is not subset. We need to change that to empty cars df. Then let's change x from being xp, let's change it to mpg, just because. Let's change also our y to, let's keep it to displacement, and then let's do our color to cylinder. Then let's change also the size of that to 3, the size of the dots, right? Our x label will be miles per gallon. Y label is displacement. Lab, in our labs, our title will be cars, and then let's make a caption. We will not have a subtitle this time. Let's have here a caption just to play with captions. Miles per gallon versus engine displacement. Colors, I don't think we need the colors, so we'll be removing this. And I think that probably should be it. I guess last thing we can do is probably, just because, we can have here the theme dot x. We're going to change the elements of the x-axis to be 90 degrees. Element text angle equal 90. V just equal, let's say 0.5, and h just equal 1. Now hopefully this works. Let's save and let's just execute this. Hopefully we're seeing something. Okay, so we're seeing here already a graph, and that's pretty cool, right? That's pretty cool. We still don't have anything else, and we have nothing in our sidebar. And this is where I want to introduce now some of the concepts of reactivity, right? So these graphs you can actually change dynamically based on inputs that you can put in here. What are some of those inputs things that you can have? Well, let me close this and let's go back here to, actually let's open a new window and let's go here, shiny inputs. Okay, inputs gallery maybe. Components, I think. Yeah, shiny components. Here we have many types of inputs: action buttons, links, checkboxes, selectors, download buttons, numerical inputs, select things, many things, right? So we're going to be using some of these inputs into our application. So for example, if you click here for a slider, you will see some code and it looks very complicated. Don't worry about it. It's actually quite simple when you're using it in Flexdashboard. You don't need to worry about the server function or all that other stuff. We're just gonna be using some very simple code. Okay, now that we have that, and we know all the different inputs that exist. Like I said, we're going to be using a slider. So let's go back to our inputs here. Input. So in our input sidebar, we have some R code here, and we'll be typing in here slider because that's the name of the input, slider input. Then the first thing we need to provide is the name of that input. So we will be calling it slider. Then we want to provide the tag, or how the slider will be called to the user. And for the user, we're gonna call it mpg. Then we need to provide a range for additional parameters, like the minimum, we want it to be 0. The max, we want it to be 35. Why 35? Because I think if we look at here at our miles per gallon, it never goes beyond 35. So that's why. 35, and then our value, let's say the starting value of it, let's make it 5. Let's say. And that's it. I think if we save this and we run this, now we will have, hopefully, a slider. See, very, very simple. We have a slider, it's moving, but it's not doing anything. So you'll be like, oh, why, Victor? Why are things not changing over here? Well, yeah, we need to put that slider into good use through reactivity. We're going to be introducing the concept of reactivity. Okay, so let's close this. But before we do that, before we introduce all that concept of reactivity and start using other stuff, let's create another input. So we're going to be using now a select input, not single select, but let's see where we have it. Numeric input, select multiple. Yeah, I think it's this one, single select. So we will be using this select input. Okay. So let's start here, select input, and you see it's from the Shiny library, right? Shiny package. We'll call this cylinders. That's the internal name of this select input. Our external name is gonna be cylinders, and then we need to provide the choices for that. Now, if we look at the code here, it says that we need to provide the choices, choice A, blah, 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 like this. But there's also another interesting way in which you can provide those choices. And that's what I'm going to do here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be calling empty cars df, and then I will be taking the information of cylinders from it directly. So I know that I have a column with cylinders here, and I can actually distill this information and pass it as a vector to choices. So it doesn't really matter if empty cars df later has different more cylinders. It'll just generate them every single time, which is very, very cool. Empty cars df, select. We're going to be selecting cylinders. After we select cylinders, we will use unique to keep only unique records. Then we will do a pull to, get only that information as a vector, not as a table. And then we will do a sort so that those unique rows are sorted. Otherwise, we would have 6, 4, and 8 probably. If you don't believe me, let's actually run it like this. Let's save it. Let's run. Then we should have a select input now. And it, just like I said, 6, 4, 8, and that doesn't look very pretty, right? It doesn't look great. So what we'll do is we'll introduce a sort here. And now if we rerun this, it should be beautifully aligned. Okay. Now we have the two inputs that we wanted, but still our graph is not really changing anything. Right? So next what we'll do is we will introduce that concept of reactivity into our plot. And we need to do some adjustments. And before we do that, I will be making first the reactivity part, and then I'll show you a common mistake. Okay, so a common mistake is just to have the ggplot in here, and then you say like, okay, I have my inputs in here. How can I change my data? Okay, so we will be doing this directly into the ggplot call. Okay, but what we'll do is we'll change first of all, I think this over here, we'll change it. The data, remember from my previous class, you can work with the data and just pass it down, or you can just pass it down to every single geom. In this case, we will be passing it only to the first ggplot call, and we're gonna be modifying this one. So empty cars df, we will do a filter, and that filter will be mpg greater or equal to, and this is where the magic happens. We will be calling this input to dynamically filter. How do we do that? We type input, then we type money sign, the name of that input, which is slider. And then we will do cylinder equal input money sign cylinders, and we're gonna save this. Now if we run this, it's gonna not work. It's not gonna work. It's like, okay, what are we doing wrong, right? And then you see that it says something like, oh, you know, input JSON name vector, blah blah blah. Name vectors will be something like this, and then input slider cannot access reactive value slider outside of reactive consumer. It's a very scary error, and if the first time you see it, it's like, okay, what's happening? Well, what's happening here is that we are saying that ggplot needs to consume some reactive input, such as a slider or a select input, and this is not basically in what RStudio would call a reactive environment, because this ggplot by itself cannot activate that reactivity. So how do we fix this? Well, very simple. We will add a function called render plot. Then now that we have our render plot is basically coming from a reactive, from the Shiny, I think, library. So let's see. Yep, see, so that makes it already by default a reactive environment, right? A reactive function. And here we will copy this stuff. We'll copy it here, and then it should work. Now, before we continue, let's add another geom. Let's add a geom smooth. Mapping X MPG displacement color cylinders. Then let's say method equal LM. Plus sign here, and let's add a geom text, and geom text we will have I think the same stuff, well, almost the same stuff. We have mpg displacement, but here instead of this we have label, and our label is gonna be hp. mpg displacement. Okay, I think that might be it. Now let's execute this. Hopefully it runs. There we go. Now we have here only cylinders, right? 4. We can modify this. Let's say if we go to 6, now we only have those cars that have 6 cylinders. Then 8, only the data points that have 8. And then we continue to modify. Of course, we can change here the MPG. So if we go beyond the you know 16 or something like this, or 20, actually 22, 20, let's see, 20. Yeah, if you go beyond 20 mpg, then there's no data points for 8 cylinders that have more than 20 miles per gallon, right? So now we have a reactive graph, and this looks pretty cool, right? It's working great. But there's something here that I didn't tell you. There's a probability that sometimes you may not have your input cylinders, it might be empty, or maybe something doesn't generate by the time that you're displaying your application. In that case, it's always good practice to add an if statement inside the render plot. So we will do that. We'll call an if, and this is just something, a condition that you can just remember to add every single time, is that if it's null, you can send that input. If input cylinders is null, right, if for any reason that that one of those inputs is null, then what we will do is we will return nothing. So if input cylinders is null, then we should see no graph. In this case, it's not going to happen. We will always see a graph because input cylinders always exist. But if for some reason it doesn't exist, then you would see an empty graph instead of seeing an error here saying like object, something object, or some red letters will pop up. Okay, great. Now we have done this with the with the render plot. Next thing we will do is we will go into our table, into our DT. So last time I think we had a data table somewhere in here that we can use. Right, let's copy it. Let's lift it directly, and that's the beauty of following the course and coding a lot, is that you can start reusing several of the things you've learned. So we're gonna be reusing that in this case. Here's for the table. And then of course the data table, or the data, is not coming from empty cars, it's coming from empty cars df. We have here again another one, so we'll have to replace all those. Actually, let's take the easy way out. Let's copy this, paste it here, and then let's replace with this. So place. Okay, we've done all the replacements. We're gonna keep the same thing: top, false, buttons. Let's say fixed columns. Let's keep fixed columns there. Even if we don't use it, we're gonna be replacing underscores with this from because df. Right, the DOM elements BLTP, same as last time. Scroll x equal false for the meantime. We might change this. We'll see if we need to change it. Page length 10, and 5, 10, 15 for the length menu, and then also the formatting, just in case something is numeric to 2 digits. Okay, we have that. Now this will not work. If we run it, probably we'll get an error once we go to the table. Oh, actually it did work. Interesting. I was expecting it not to work. Usually something, well, data table is itself, I guess, a reactive environment, but just to make sure, and this is something that we will learn later on, so it's better that we do it right now. Even if it's working right now, we should be using something called render DT. That's another way in which we can do it. And then we can just place our table inside there. And this should have this exactly the same effect, I believe. It should also work. Yeah, it's working. Now there's something weird here. You see, we cannot really scroll this way. It's just here, and this is not looking great. That's coming from here, from scroll x false. So let's change this to true. Run it again. go to table and chart, and there we go. See, fantastic. Now we have it basically moving. We can show more entries here. Scroll down, scroll to the left, and it's looking pretty great. We can copy or save it as a CSV or print it, and all those buttons should work the exact same way. Let's see. Yeah, see. So I'm not gonna save anything, but okay. So that's our DT. We basically have our DT down. That's great. We're not gonna be modifying it with any of the dynamic inputs here. I think it's not worth it because we can always just filter here stuff. So I'm not gonna be doing that. But I want to introduce one greater last thing before we finish this class. And actually, we're doing some great time. Let's see if we can keep it up to less than an hour. Okay, so I will close this. Now let's go into using Plotly. Plotly is an amazing package that allows you to make your graphs much more interactive than this chart. So this chart looks great, but it's not that great once you learn how to use Plotly. Then you realize like, oh yeah, Plotly is another, it's a game changer, right? It'll add that additional interactivity to your graph. Although we can change things here, our graph is kind of boring, to be honest. You know, you cannot do anything, it's just an image. So we're gonna be using a Plotly to do that. So this is where we'll start. We'll have to code quite a bit here, so bear with me. So first thing we'll do is we'll do a render Plotly call, and inside of it we will be placing the code for our graph. So in this case, let's copy this and we will modify it. And let's say in this case, since Plotly can take ggplot objects, so we will generate our ggplot, and then we will take that ggplot and pass it down to a Plotly function so that it can later be plotted using Plotly. So that's very neat. So you don't really need to know a lot more about Plotly. As long as you know how to use ggplot and you learn a little things here and there for Plotly, then you will already be capable of doing greatly interactive graphs. So we will be storing that in something called P1, plot1, let's say. So we will do our ggplot. I'm gonna be removing gm smooth and gm text because I don't want them. Let's keep it a little bit simpler. Okay, and then I will also be removing my caption, because caption, that's something that we will be incorporating in the ggplotly in the Plotly object, not in here, because it doesn't really work that well. So that's why I'm removing it in this case. Okay, now we have our P1, right? And after that, after we have our plot, our ggplot, what we will do is we will do ggplotly from the Plotly package. You see, first option here. We're gonna click this. We're gonna pass P1, and then we're gonna use pipes. So first thing we'll do is the layout. We will change the layout here, and then here we'll tap drag mode. And by the way, Plotly has let's see if we can just yeah, here on Plotly you can find also the documentation and anything on how to use Plotly. I'm not gonna go through every single thing, right? But just so you know, this is where you can also check that documentation, Plotly in ggplot, right, where you can create some amazing graphs. So let's go back here. So drag mode, I will be saying it's false. Then annotations, that's what we want to, that's the equivalent of caption. So annotations equal, and then we'll pass a list. And this is where it gets a bit complicated. X is going to be equal to 1, Y is going to be equal to minus 0.5. Then we will add text, what we want that to say. So it'll say miles per gallon versus engine displacement. Then we will use our, need to type xref equal paper. What does xref paper mean? It means that the reference will be between 0 and 1, right? And it'll be basically on the graph itself. We need to do yref2 equal paper. Then we will show arrow equal false, x anchor equal right. That's where we're going to be anchoring. Y anchor equal also right, the way it anchors. Then x shift equal 0, y shift equal 0. This in case something I think related to pixels. Actually, let me actually look into that exactly, so that we can I'm just gonna quickly look up that for you guys so that we have a clear understanding of what those means. That means those parameters mean. Okay, so yeah, xref paper means that the x position of the text is relative to the entire plot rather than the data coordinates. Okay, so it references the entire plot, and that's the similar thing for yref equal paper. Then we have show arrow equal false. It's this indicates whether to display an arrow pointing to the annotation. False means that no arrow will be shown. Right, we can change it to true and later see how it looks like. Then we have x anchor and y anchor. This is the positions, the text to the left of the x coordinate, and then the positions of the text above the y coordinate, basically. And then x shift equals 0 and y shift equals 0. What we have this is this control any shift in the position of the text along the x and y axis. So 0 means no horizontal shift, and y shift means no vertical shift. So that's basically what those things mean. Now let's go back. Okay, great. What else do we need to add in here? We will add a font equal list size equal 10, let's say. Okay, so that should have our annotation done, but we're not done yet. We still need to actually, let's see if we can run this. Will it run? Yeah, it's already running, and we have a lot of things happening in here, right? Lots of things. So I'll be deactivating many of these things, right? You can remove these, for example, many other things. I will be removing that. So just give me a second, okay? So let's close. But so far it's looking great, right? I think we're missing here our annotations still. We might need to adjust that further. Maybe that's why it's not showing. We'll fix it. Don't worry. Okay. So we're not done yet with our graph. So we will access now the configuration of that plotly, and then we'll say display logo equal false. That means that the plotly logo will go away in case you don't want it. I usually don't want it in my graphs, so I get rid of it. Then we will have something called mode bar buttons to remove. We're passing down a list, and then we need to type a bunch of things in here. We need to type send data to cloud, and please bear with me, this is gonna be the slow part. There's so many things that we want to remove from there. Auto scale 2D, want to remove that too. Let's remove also reset scale 2D, and I'm just writing it down so that you know some of the elements. I don't think I'll go through the whole list. But it's good that you get to know them. Hover, closest Cartesian, then hover, compare Cartesian. Then we'll also remove zoom 2D. We'll remove pan 2D. These are all buttons in the graph. We'll remove select 2D. Lasso 2D. Sorry, there was some dust on my keyboard. Lasso 2D, then zoom in 2D, we're also getting rid of that, and finally we'll get rid of zoom out 2D. Great, now we have all that removed. But we're still not done yet. We will be doing something extra in a bit, in just a bit. Okay, so let's see how it's looking. Let's see if it executes first of all. Hopefully it does. Okay. Now we have all of that removed. We still have pan. Okay, so that means we need to, okay, pan 2D. There we go. If I execute again, I shouldn't see the pan anymore. Yeah. We have download plot as PNG. But we can change that. So okay, so let's do that. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is here will be the to image button options. This will be equal to a list, and we'll be passing down the following things. Actually, okay, let's leave it like this. Format will be equal to SVG, because I like SVGs, and then file name, because if we don't provide a file name, it'll just save it with whatever it likes, but I want to give a file name, and this is where the MVP paste function comes and saves us again. And you can have this also change. So here we'll say that it's coming from a reactive input called cylinders, and then we will call this cylinder cars. Okay, and by the way, you can also, there's something here in code, you can unselect soft wrap lines, and these will usually, in case you're running out of space, it won't soft wrap the line so that you can have your code in a more digestible way. We'll be adding something else in here to our list, just to have it, right? Let's comment it out. Height, you can actually provide a height. let's say we're not gonna be using it, but just so just so that you have it in case you ever want to use it. Then we won't be using this, so I'll keep it like that. Okay, and then that's it. Actually, we'll be adding one more thing, but first I want to see how this is looking. Like, uh, by the way, we're missing something here in paste. The separator should be equal to hyphen. Okay, so we have it now. We have it now like that. Let's run our document. Let's look at our chart. Oh, argument 3 is empty. Okay, it's good that it happened. So that means that we probably have a comma somewhere that is not required. That's usually what happens when it says argument 3 is empty, or something argument some number is empty, right? So that means we have here this. You see 1, 2, and a third argument we don't have. So we have a comma here. And this is a very, very common mistake. So if it ever happens to you that you run your application, your dashboard, and it says error argument 3 is empty, that means that you definitely have an additional comma somewhere. So let's remove that. And now it should work. For sure. There we go. Beautiful. Now, here you have, before we click the download plot button, here you have, for example, it's the MPGs, and it's displaying this information. In case you don't want this information, you can also remove it, and I will remove it. So I will show you how to do that. To do that, we will do another, in this function over here, you see it's in the configuration. So after the configuration, we'll do a pipe. Then we will type in here style, and then hover info equal to none. We will save this, execute this, and then there's no hover info. Now I think the hover info is kind of nice in some situations, so I will be commenting that out, okay, so that we keep it. Let's comment it out. Let's run the document again. And now we have our chart again with this the hover information. And if we change this, you know, to 8 or whatever, it's actually changing it. See, pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. We still haven't fixed the caption, right? So we still need to fix that caption. Let's see. Let's say that is 0. Let's see if that works. Okay, so 0 was a bit too much. So let's change that to, you might have to play around, 0.1. That's 0.2, let's say. Hopefully we got it right. No, we went too far. Well, maybe it's just 0.0. Well, let's see, 0.05. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, sometimes you have to play around with things, right? So I think that basically takes us to the end of our lesson, right? So what did we, by the way, you can also open in a browser. Let's see if actually Did I open it somewhere? Uh, here it is. But I stopped the application, so that's why it stopped. Okay, let's run it again. And here we go. So here I have it open in a different web browser. This is Firefox, but it's working the same. Right, we have miles per gallon. Everything is reactive. We're changing our graph as it goes, right? So everything is working pretty amazing. So I'll be closing this. Okay, so I'll be closing this again. And that basically takes us to the end of our class today. I think we managed to do it in 56 minutes. So that was close to an hour, just like I promised, right? So let's save our work, or our work should already be saved, uh, right? So things that you should remember. You should remember that you can consult Flexdashboard for layouts, right? You can see how that layout was created. You can copy the code here and then just adjust what you need. You have the different elements for Shiny, right, that you can use if you want to use a checkbox or anything else. You can just have to consult the how to write it and just take this, for example. You don't need to worry about the server, at least not yet, until we see Shiny applications later down in our course. And then you also have Plotly. If you want to know more information about it, you can visit the reference. But I think this probably gives you a very good ability to reuse some of this code and create your graphs. You already know how to create ggplot, you know how to analyze data using the tidyverse, and we're putting all this together to create our very first dashboard, which for our first dashboard it looks pretty amazing, right? We have our ggplot here, not interactive or anything, and then we said like, hey, we're gonna add this amazing chart in here that we from the DT package, and then we capped that off with going one step beyond with GG plot and Plotly. By the way, if I click download plot here, you'll see that it says 4-cylinder cars.svg, so I'm gonna save that. That should be saved in my downloads, and just let me copy that. It's there, by the way. So let me open it for you. There we go. So this is the plot that we saved from Plotly. Right, we have the cylinder for miles per gallon versus engine displacement, and everything is working beautifully, right? It's a PNG graphs. I mean, not PNG, it's an SVG, so that's also very good. Okay, so I will be closing this. And that's basically it for today's class. With this knowledge, you can now create a simple, well, actually you can create very complex dashboards if you want. Of course, it's within a particular framework called Flexdashboard. If you want much more customizability, then you need to move into Shiny application development territory, because there are certain things that you will probably not be able to do with Flex dashboard. But to start, you can create basically your own dashboards that run locally on your computer to analyze your data very quickly. If you're more let's say adventurous, you can start looking into how to set up your own Shiny server, and then you can basically move those applications to your Shiny server. With that said, I hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I hope that you are able to apply this information somewhere at your work, just to create your small applications to play with your data, visualize it in very fun ways. um, right? And I hope that you can use that knowledge. With that said, we have arrived to the end of our class, right? If you like the content that I'm creating, if you like this class, please remember to like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me if we can get the YouTube algorithm to bump my videos a little bit up so that more people can benefit from this knowledge that I am giving you, right? I'm giving it completely free of charge. I just want more people to increase their productivity so that they can have more time to do what they actually enjoy to do at work instead of doing all the boring work. Let's say it. We all have it, right? And we all want to get rid of it. Well, this is a way to get rid of it by learning programming, learning R. Okay, so that's it. So class dismissed, and I'll see you next time. Next time, what will we watching next time or learning next time? I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about what we learn next, but it's probably gonna be interesting. So see you next time. Class dismissed.